The vanishing Earth was an ordinary morning on Earth. The sun was rising, birds were singing, and people were waking up, ready to start their day. But something strange was happening, something no one could see. The air was changing. It was happening slowly at first, so slowly that no one noticed. But soon things would become very different. In the small town of Greenfield, Sarah was just waking up. She stretched and took a deep breath, but something felt wrong. The air was thinner, harder to breathe. She thought it was just her imagination or maybe the weather. But when she went outside, she saw her neighbor, Mr. Johnson, coughing hard. "Are you okay, Mr. Johnson?" she asked, worried. Mr. Johnson shook his head, still coughing. "I don't know, Sarah. The air feels strange today. It's like there's not enough oxygen," he said, taking deep breaths but still feeling short of air. Sarah felt it too. Her chest felt tight and breathing was difficult. She quickly went back inside and turned on the news. The news anchor was speaking urgently, and the words on the screen made her heart race. Oxygen levels dropping worldwide. The news spread fast. All over the world, people were feeling the same thing. Breathing was becoming harder. In big cities like New York, London, and Tokyo, hospitals were filling up with people struggling to breathe. Panic was growing as scientists and doctors tried to figure out what was happening. The oxygen that everyone depended on was disappearing, but no one knew why. In a secret laboratory deep underground, Dr. Marcus was working with his team of scientists. They had been studying the Earth's atmosphere for years, but nothing like this had ever happened before. The oxygen levels were dropping rapidly, and if it continued, life on Earth would be in danger. Dr. Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he studied the data on his computer screen. "It's like something is sucking the oxygen right out of the atmosphere," Dr. Marcus said, his voice filled with concern. "But that's impossible. What could be causing this?" His assistant, Emily, looked up from her work. "We need to find out fast, Dr. Marcus. People are already dying in some parts of the world. If we don't figure this out soon, it's going to be a global catastrophe." The team worked tirelessly, analyzing data from satellites and weather stations. They discovered that the oxygen wasn't just disappearing, it was being taken. But who or what could be powerful enough to steal Earth's oxygen, and why? As the day went on, the situation grew worse. Schools and businesses closed down as people were told to stay indoors. The government declared a state of emergency. In some places, people were already wearing oxygen masks, and hospitals were running out of supplies. It was chaos everywhere, and the fear was spreading faster than the news. Sarah tried to stay calm, but it was hard. She kept thinking about her family, her friends, and everyone in her town. What if the oxygen didn't come back? What if they all suffocated? The thought was terrifying. She decided to call her brother, James, who lived in the city. "James, have you heard what's happening?" Sarah asked when he picked up the phone. "Yes, it's all over the news. They're saying it might be an attack, but no one knows for sure," James replied, his voice tense. "I've never seen anything like this. People are panicking everywhere." "I don't know what to do. Just stay inside and try to stay calm," Sarah said, though she knew it was easier said than done. "The scientists are working on it. They'll find a way to fix this," but deep down, Sarah wasn't so sure. The more she watched the news, the more hopeless it seemed. There were reports of strange lights in the sky, sightings of unidentified flying objects, and theories about aliens. It all sounded crazy, but in a world where the air could suddenly disappear, anything seemed possible. Dr. Marcus and his team were working around the clock. Finally, they managed to track the source of the oxygen theft. It was coming from deep space. The oxygen was being siphoned off by a massive alien ship, far larger than anything humans had ever seen before. The ship was using advanced technology to drain Earth's atmosphere, leaving humanity to suffocate. Dr. Marcus couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Aliens," he whispered, staring at the screen. "They're stealing our oxygen." But why? What do they want? The realization hit him hard. If the aliens could take Earth's oxygen, they could take anything. This was an invasion, not just of Earth's atmosphere, but of Earth itself. The world was under attack, and humanity was completely unprepared. As the oxygen continued to vanish, the situation became more desperate. Dr. Marcus knew they had to act fast, but how could they fight against an enemy so powerful? The answer seemed impossible, But they had no choice. Humanity would have to find a way or face extinction. The first contact, Doctor. Marcus stared at the massive alien ship on his computer screen, feeling a mix of fear and disbelief. The ship was far larger than anything humans had ever built, and it was hovering just beyond Earth's atmosphere, slowly draining the planet's oxygen. He knew they had to act quickly, but what could they do against such an advanced enemy? In the control room, the tension was thick. Scientists, military officers, and government officials were gathered, all waiting for Dr. Marcus to say something. The world was watching, and the fate of humanity rested on what they decided to do next. "We have to make contact," Dr. Marcus finally said, breaking the silence. "If we don't try to communicate, we'll never know why they're doing this or if there's a way to stop it." The military officers in the room exchanged uneasy glances. General Stevens, a stern man with years of experience, spoke up. "Contacting them is risky. We don't know how they'll react. They might see it as a threat and attack us." Dr. Marcus nodded, understanding the general's concern. "But we don't have a choice. If we do nothing, the oxygen will run out and billions of people will die. We have to try." After a brief discussion, they agreed to send a message to the alien ship. It was a simple, straightforward message broadcasted in multiple languages and formats, hoping that the aliens would understand at least one. The message was clear: "We want to talk. Please respond." As the message was sent, everyone in the control room held their breath. The seconds felt like hours as they waited for a reply. The alien ship remained silent, its enormous structure casting a dark shadow over Earth. Just as hope began to fade, the screens in the control room flickered. The alien ship was responding. A strange, otherworldly voice filled the room, speaking in a language that no one recognized. The scientists quickly worked to decode the message, and within minutes, they had a translation. "We are the Vorath. We need your oxygen to survive. We will not return it." The message sent a chill through the room. The Vorath didn't care about the lives they were endangering. They only cared about their own survival. But Dr. Marcus wasn't ready to give up. He knew they had to try and reason with them. "Ask them why they need our oxygen," Dr. Marcus said, trying to stay calm. "Maybe there's something we can do to help without destroying our planet." The message was sent, and once again the room fell silent as they waited for a response. This time the reply came quickly. "Our planet is dying. We cannot breathe our atmosphere any longer. Your oxygen is the only thing that can save us." Dr. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to think of a solution. The Vorath were desperate, but so were the humans. "We need to find a way to help them without sacrificing our own survival," he said to the room. "There has to be another way." The discussion that followed was intense. Some argued that the Vorath should be seen as enemies and that they needed to be stopped by any means necessary. Others, like Dr. Marcus, believed that there was still a chance to find a peaceful solution. They just needed more information. "We need to see them face to face," Dr. Marcus finally said. "If we can understand their situation better, maybe we can come up with a solution that works for both of us." General Stevens wasn't convinced. "And what if they attack? We can't risk the safety of our people." Dr. Marcus understood the general's fear, but he also knew that they couldn't just sit back and do nothing. "We'll send a small team, carefully selected and well protected. They'll go up there, meet with the Vorath, and try to negotiate." After some debate, the plan was approved. A team of 5 was chosen, including Dr. Marcus, who insisted on going himself. The team also included Emily, the brilliant scientist who had been by his side since the beginning, and 3 specially trained astronauts. The next day, the team boarded a spacecraft and launched into the sky. As they approached the alien ship, the tension in the control room back on Earth was palpable. Everyone watched the monitors, waiting to see what would happen. The spacecraft docked with the Vorath ship, and the team stepped inside. The air was thick and humid, different from anything they had ever breathed before. The walls of the ship were smooth and metallic, glowing with an eerie blue light. As they moved deeper into the ship, they were met by a group of Vorath. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale, almost translucent skin. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with a grace that was almost unsettling. Dr. Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine, but he forced himself to stay calm. The leader of the Vorath stepped forward. "You are here to talk. Speak quickly. Our people are dying." Dr. Marcus took a deep breath. We want to help you, but we can't sacrifice our own planet. We need to find another way for you to survive without taking our oxygen." The Vorath leader stared at him for a long moment. "There is no other way," he finally said. "Our technology is advanced, but we cannot create oxygen. We can only take it. Dr. Marcus refused to give up. We can work together. Maybe we can help you find a way to adapt to your environment or find another source of oxygen. But if you keep taking from Earth, we'll both be destroyed." The Vorath leader considered this. "We will listen," he said. "But know this. If you fail, we will take what we need, no matter the cost." With that, the first contact between humans and the Vorath ended. The team returned to Earth with a small glimmer of hope. They had a chance to find a solution, but the clock was ticking. The fate of both species hung in the balance, and there was no time to waste. Humans don't give up back on Earth. The tension was at an all-time high. The world was watching as the team of scientists and astronauts returned from their first encounter with the Vorath. They had made contact, but the situation was far from resolved. The Vorath needed Earth's oxygen to survive, and they had made it clear that they would take it by force if necessary. In the control room, Dr. Marcus stood before a crowd of worried officials and military leaders. His face was pale, and his eyes were tired, but there was a fire in his voice as he spoke. "We've learned that the Vorath are desperate," Dr. Marcus said, looking around the room. "But that doesn't mean we should give up. Humanity has faced impossible challenges before, and we've always found a way to survive. This time will be no different." General Stevens, always the skeptic, folded his arms and frowned. "We can't just hope for a miracle, Dr. Marcus. We need a plan, and we need it fast. The oxygen levels are still dropping, and we're running out of time." Dr. Marcus nodded, knowing that the general was right. "We have to approach this from all angles. We need to find a way to either help the Vorath adapt or stop them from taking our oxygen without starting a war." The room fell silent as everyone thought about the enormous task ahead of them. The Vorath had technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen. They were powerful, and they were determined to survive, even if it meant wiping out humanity. But Dr. Marcus knew that giving up was not an option. "Let's focus on what we can do," Dr. Marcus continued. "We need our best scientists working on a solution. Maybe there's a way to create a synthetic oxygen that the Vorath can use, or perhaps we can find a way to help them adapt to breathing something else, like water." "Water?" General Stevens raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we teach an alien species to breathe water? That sounds impossible." "Maybe it does," Dr. Marcus admitted. "But we won't know until we try. We have to explore every option, no matter how unlikely it seems. The Vorath are intelligent. They were able to find our planet and start taking our oxygen. If we can show them another way, maybe they'll listen." The team quickly got to work. Scientists from around the world began collaborating, sharing ideas, and working tirelessly to find a solution. They studied the Vorath's physiology, trying to understand how their bodies worked and what they needed to survive. The clock was ticking, but they didn't let that stop them. Humanity's survival depended on their determination and creativity. Meanwhile, Dr. Marcus and Emily spent long hours in the lab, brainstorming and testing theories. They worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and a relentless drive to save their planet. Every failure only made them more determined to succeed. They knew that the Vorath were watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. But humans were strong, and they wouldn't give up easily. As the days passed, the situation grew more desperate. People around the world were struggling to breathe. The oxygen levels were dangerously low, and the news was filled with stories of people collapsing in the streets. Hospitals were overwhelmed, and the world was on the brink of chaos. But despite the fear and uncertainty, people didn't lose hope. In Greenfield, Sarah watched the news anxiously, her heart heavy with worry. She had been following Dr. Marcus's efforts closely, praying that he would find a solution. She knew that humanity had a history of overcoming challenges, but this one felt different. It was like they were fighting against the very forces of nature itself. But Sarah refused to give in to despair. She kept reminding herself that humans were resilient. They had survived wars, pandemics, and natural disasters. They had walked on the moon and unlocked the secrets of the atom. If anyone could find a way out of this crisis, it was the human race. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, Sarah stood on her porch and took a deep breath. The air was thin and she could feel the strain on her lungs, but she also felt a deep sense of pride. She knew that people like Dr. Marcus were out there, working around the clock to save them all, and she knew that giving up was not in their nature. Back in the lab, Dr. Marcus and Emily were on the verge of a breakthrough. They had discovered that the Vorath might be able to adapt to breathing water, but it would require a radical change in their physiology. It was a long shot, but it was the best idea they had. Now they just needed to figure out how to present this solution to the Vorath and convince them to try it. "This could work," Emily said, her eyes bright with excitement. "If we can show them how to make the transition, we might be able to save both our species." Dr. Marcus smiled, feeling a surge of hope. "Humans don't give up," he said quietly. "We've come this far and we're not about to stop now. Let's get to work." With renewed energy, the team pushed forward, knowing that time was running out. The fate of humanity and the Vorath rested in their hands, and they were determined to find a way to save them all. They didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing was certain: humans would never give up, no matter how impossible the challenge seemed. The Bold Idea Doctor. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the notes scattered in front of him. His mind raced with possibilities, but none of them seemed to offer a guaranteed solution. The world was in crisis and the clock was ticking. Despite the weight of the situation, he refused to let despair take hold. He had a team of brilliant minds working alongside him, and together they were determined to find a way out of this mess. Emily entered the lab, her face flushed with excitement. "Dr. Marcus, I think I've found something," she exclaimed, holding up a data sheet. Dr. Marcus looked up, his eyes lighting up with interest. "What is it?" "It's a concept I've been working on," Emily said, spreading the sheet out on the table. "If we can alter the Vorath's physiology, even slightly, we might be able to help them adapt to breathing water. We could potentially create an environment where they can survive without needing Earth's oxygen." Dr. Marcus leaned in, studying the data. Emily's idea was bold, some might even say crazy, but it was the kind of thinking they needed in this desperate situation. "It's risky," he said, "but it just might work. How do we go about making this happen?" "We'd need to start by analyzing their cellular structure in more detail," Emily explained. "If we can find a way to introduce specific genes into their system, we might be able to trigger the necessary changes. It's like teaching their bodies to evolve, but in a controlled way." Dr. Marcus nodded, the gears in his mind turning. "We'd also need to consider how to deliver these changes to an entire population. It's not just about altering a few individuals, we're talking about the survival of their entire species." The idea was daunting, but they had no choice but to explore every option. Dr. Marcus and Emily quickly called a meeting with the rest of the team, laying out their plan. As expected, the proposal was met with a mix of reactions: excitement, skepticism, and even fear. "This could be the breakthrough we've been looking for," one scientist said, his voice tinged with hope. "If we can pull this off, we'll not only save our planet, but we'll also be remembered as the ones who solved an impossible problem." "But what if it goes wrong?" another team member asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "If we fail, we might make the situation even worse. The Vorath could turn on us, or the changes could backfire and harm them." Dr. Marcus listened carefully, understanding the risks involved. "I know this isn't a guaranteed success," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But we're out of time, and we can't afford to play it safe anymore. This is our best shot, and we have to take it." After some discussion, the team agreed to move forward with the bold idea. They knew the risks, but they also knew that doing nothing was not an option. With a renewed sense of purpose, they began working around the clock, gathering the information and resources they needed to execute the plan. The first step was to gather more data on the Vorath's biology. Dr. Marcus sent a message to the Vorath ship, requesting a meeting to discuss their findings. To his relief, the Vorath leader agreed, though it was clear that their patience was running thin. As the team prepared for the meeting, Emily pulled Dr. Marcus aside. "What if they don't agree to the plan?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. "What if they refuse to cooperate?" Dr. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, he said. Right now, we need to focus on convincing them that this is their best chance for survival. We have to make them see that working together is the only way forward. The next day, the team boarded their spacecraft and headed back to the Vorath ship. The atmosphere was tense as they docked and entered the alien vessel once more. The Vorath leader was waiting for them, his expression unreadable. "You have news?" the Vorath leader asked, his voice carrying an edge of impatience. Dr. Marcus stepped forward, carefully choosing his words. "We've been working on a solution that could help both of our species survive. It's a bold idea, but it might just work. We believe we can help your people adapt to breathing water instead of oxygen." The Vorath leader's eyes narrowed. "You think you can change our biology? That is a dangerous path, human." "I understand your concerns," Dr. Marcus replied, trying to convey both confidence and humility. "But we're running out of time, and this is our best chance. We've studied your physiology, and we believe we can make the necessary changes. It won't be easy, but it's possible." The Vorath leader remained silent for a long moment, his dark eyes fixed on Dr. Marcus. The tension in the room was almost unbearable, but Dr. Marcus held his ground, determined to show that humans were not to be underestimated. Finally, the Vorath leader spoke. "We will consider your proposal," he said, his tone cautious. "But know this, if you fail, there will be consequences. We will not wait for death to come for us." Dr. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of the situation. "We won't fail," he said with quiet determination. "We'll do everything in our power to make this work." With that, the meeting ended, and the team returned to Earth. There was no time to waste. They immediately set to work, refining their plan and preparing for the monumental task ahead. They knew the risks, but they also knew that they couldn't give up. The fate of both humanity and the Vorath rested on their shoulders, and they were ready to do whatever it took to succeed. As the days passed, the team made steady progress. They encountered setbacks and challenges, but they pushed through, driven by the knowledge that failure was not an option. With each step forward, they grew more confident that their bold idea could become a reality. And so the stage was set for the next phase of their daring plan. Humanity's fight for survival was far from over, but Dr. Marcus and his team were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had a bold idea, and they were determined to see it through, no matter what. Deep Sea Lessons. With the Vorath leader's cautious agreement to the bold idea, Dr. Marcus and his team knew they were standing on the edge of an unprecedented challenge. To help the Vorath adapt to breathing water, they needed to learn from Earth's own deep-sea creatures, species that had evolved over millions of years to survive in the harshest underwater environments. The oceans, vast and mysterious, held the secrets they needed to unlock. Dr. Marcus gathered his team in the lab. Emily, who had been at the forefront of the research, was now focused on studying the adaptations of aquatic life. "Our oceans are full of examples of how life can thrive without oxygen in the same way we're used to," she explained. "From deep sea fish that breathe through gills to microorganisms that survive on chemical energy, we have a lot to learn." "Exactly," Dr. Marcus agreed. "The ocean has always been a place where life finds a way. If we can replicate these processes in the Vorath, we might be able to give them a fighting chance." The team divided their efforts. Some worked on gathering data from deep-sea expeditions, while others focused on laboratory experiments to test how the Vorath might respond to these changes. Dr. Marcus himself led a small team to the Pacific Ocean, where they would dive deep into the abyss, studying the creatures that lived miles below the surface. As they prepared for the dive, the tension was palpable. The ocean depths were dangerous and unpredictable, but they had no choice. The fate of humanity, and possibly the Vorath, depended on what they would discover. The submarine descended slowly, the light from the surface fading until only darkness surrounded them. Inside, Dr. Marcus, Emily, and two other scientists watched the monitors intently. The pressure increased as they went deeper, but the sturdy vessel was built to withstand it. Approaching the target depth, the pilot announced, "We're almost there." The lights on the submarine's exterior flickered on, illuminating the deep-sea environment. Strange alien creatures floated past the windows, jellyfish with bioluminescent tentacles, fish with translucent bodies, and strange crustaceans that scuttled across the seafloor. Emily pointed to the screen. "Look at that," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "These creatures have adapted to survive in complete darkness, with no oxygen from the surface. If we can figure out how they do it, we might be able to use that knowledge to help the Vorath." Dr. Marcus nodded, equally fascinated by the display. "These organisms rely on things like chemosynthesis instead of photosynthesis," he explained. "They convert chemicals from hydrothermal vents into energy. If the Vorath can harness similar processes, they could survive underwater without relying on our oxygen." The team spent hours collecting samples and data. They carefully captured specimens, storing them in special containers that mimicked the high-pressure, low-oxygen environment of the deep sea. Each sample was a potential key to unlocking the Vorath's survival. Back on the surface, the team returned to the lab, eager to analyze their findings. The samples were examined under microscopes, and genetic sequences were mapped out. The more they studied, the more they realized how incredible the adaptations of these deep-sea creatures were. "These organisms are like nothing else on Earth," Emily said, excitement in her voice as she peered through the microscope. "They're so specialized, yet they've found a way to thrive in an environment that would kill most other life forms. If we can figure out how to replicate these adaptations in the Vorath, we might just have a solution." Dr. Marcus agreed. "We're on the right track. Now we need to figure out how to introduce these traits into the Vorath's biology. It won't be easy, but this is the breakthrough we've been looking for." The next step was to create a prototype, an engineered organism that could serve as a bridge between the Vorath and the deep-sea creatures they had studied. This organism would need to survive in water, process nutrients in a new way, and, most importantly, thrive without relying on oxygen from the atmosphere. The lab buzzed with activity as the team worked tirelessly on the prototype. Every day brought new challenges and new discoveries. There were setbacks, but each failure only pushed them to try harder. They knew they were close, and that kept them going. Finally, after weeks of grueling work, the team had something to show for their efforts. The prototype was ready, a genetically engineered organism that combined the traits of deep-sea creatures with the physiology of the Vorath. It was a bold creation, something that had never been attempted before. "We're going to present this to the Vorath," Dr. Marcus said, holding up the prototype. "This is our proof that we can help them adapt. If they're willing to work with us, we can start the process of integrating these changes into their species." Emily looked at the prototype with a mix of hope and anxiety. "Do you think they'll accept it?" she asked. "They have to," Dr. Marcus replied. "It's their best chance for survival, and ours." With the prototype in hand, Dr. Marcus and his team once again boarded their spacecraft, heading back to the Vorath ship. This time, the atmosphere was different. There was a sense of cautious optimism mixed with the ever-present tension. They had a solution, but it would be up to the Vorath to decide if they were willing to take the risk. As they docked and entered the Vorath ship, Dr. Marcus could feel the weight of the moment. The Vorath leader awaited them, his expression unreadable as always. Dr. Marcus stepped forward, holding out the prototype. "This," he said, "is the key to your survival. It's based on our deep-sea creatures, organisms that have learned to thrive in environments without oxygen. We believe we can use this to help your people adapt." The Vorath leader examined the prototype carefully, his dark eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. The room was silent as everyone waited for his response. Finally, the Vorath leader spoke. "You have done well, human," he said, his voice measured. "We will consider your proposal. It wasn't a full agreement, but it was enough for now." The team returned to Earth, their spirits lifted. They had taken a major step forward, and now it was up to the Vorath to decide their fate. As Dr. Marcus looked out at the stars, he knew that the journey was far from over. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope that they might just make it through this crisis. Together. A race against time, Doctor. Marcus and his team had returned to Earth, but the atmosphere in the lab was far from relaxed. The situation was critical. There was no time to waste. The Vorath, struggling with the effects of the oxygen depletion, were desperate for a solution, and the human team was working around the clock to deliver on their promise. The prototype organism they had developed was promising, but now they faced the challenge of scaling it up. They had to create a version that could be integrated into the Vorath's biology quickly and efficiently. The clock was ticking, and failure was not an option. "We're running out of time," Dr. Marcus said during a meeting with his team. His voice was steady, but the tension in the room was palpable. "We need to accelerate our efforts. The Vorath won't survive much longer without this adaptation." Emily, who had been leading the genetic engineering efforts, nodded. "We've been refining the prototype," she explained. "We're making progress, but we need to make sure it's stable enough for widespread application. If anything goes wrong, it could be catastrophic." Dr. Marcus knew she was right. The Vorath's physiology was complex, and any misstep could lead to disaster. But they didn't have the luxury of time for endless testing. They needed to take calculated risks and push forward, or they would lose everything they had worked for. The team divided into specialized groups. Some focused on refining the genetic modifications, while others worked on creating a delivery system that would introduce the new traits into the Vorath's bodies. They had to find a way to ensure that every Vorath would receive the adaptation quickly. There was no room for delays. As the days turned into nights, the lab hummed with activity. Researchers barely slept, fueled by coffee and determination. The sense of urgency drove them forward, even as exhaustion loomed over them. They were all aware of the stakes. Failure meant not only the extinction of the Vorath, but also the loss of humanity's only chance to prevent further alien hostilities. Dr. Marcus spent every waking hour in the lab, overseeing the different teams and providing guidance. He knew that as the leader, he had to stay strong even when doubt crept in. But deep down, he was feeling the weight of the responsibility. If they failed, it would be on him. Meanwhile, the Vorath were facing their own struggle. The depletion of oxygen had started taking a toll on their population. Reports from the Vorath leader indicated that their health was deteriorating rapidly. Their bodies, unable to adapt fast enough, were beginning to fail them. "The Vorath are getting weaker," the Vorath leader said in a transmission to Dr. Marcus. His voice was strained, a stark contrast to the calm authority he had shown before. "We need your solution now, or it will be too late." "We're close," Dr. Marcus replied, trying to keep his tone steady. "We're pushing as hard as we can. Hold on just a little longer." But the truth was they were running out of time. Every hour that passed brought them closer to the point of no return. Dr. Marcus knew they had to act now, even if the prototype wasn't perfect. "We have to move forward with the deployment," he told his team during an emergency meeting. "We can't wait any longer. We'll keep refining as we go, but we need to get this into the Vorath systems immediately." The team members exchanged nervous glances, but they all knew Dr. Marcus was right. It was a risk, but it was their only chance. They quickly moved into action, preparing the prototype for mass distribution. The delivery system they had developed was designed to work with the Vorath's biology, ensuring that the new traits would integrate seamlessly. But there were no guarantees. As the final preparations were made, Dr. Marcus contacted the Vorath leader again. "We're ready to proceed," he said. "We're sending you the instructions and materials now. You'll need to administer them to your population as quickly as possible." The Vorath leader nodded, his expression grim. "We will do what is necessary. Thank you, human." The transmission ended, and Dr. Marcus felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. The fate of the Vorath was now out of their hands. All they could do was wait and hope that their solution would work. The hours that followed were agonizing. The team remained in the lab, monitoring the situation closely. The Vorath began administering the prototype to their people, but the process was slow and fraught with challenges. The oxygen levels continued to drop, and the Vorath were struggling to hold on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they received a message from the Vorath leader. His voice was weak, but there was a note of hope in it. "We have begun to see some improvement," he said. "The adaptation is taking hold. It is not perfect, but it is giving us a chance." The room erupted in cautious cheers. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a sign that their efforts were paying off. The Vorath were beginning to stabilize, and for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope that they might survive this crisis. Dr. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. They had given the Vorath a fighting chance. But he knew their work was far from over. There were still countless challenges ahead, and the race against time wasn't truly over yet. But for now, they had won a crucial battle in the war for survival. Oxygen returned. The tension in Dr. Marcus's lab was almost unbearable. After the frantic race against time to deliver the prototype to the Vorath, they now faced the critical moment of truth. The prototype was supposed to help the Vorath adapt to breathing water, but would it work? Days had passed since the initial deployment. The team worked tirelessly, analyzing data and waiting for reports from the Vorath. The scientists were on edge, their eyes glued to screens that displayed fluctuating data and communication from the Vorath leader. In the lab, Emily stared at her monitor, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. "We're starting to see some positive changes," she said, her voice a mix of relief and cautious optimism. "The Vorath's condition seems to be stabilizing." Dr. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, reviewing the latest figures. "It's good to hear, but we need to make sure the improvements are sustainable. We can't afford any setbacks." As if on cue, a new message from the Vorath leader appeared on the main screen. The leader's face looked weary but hopeful. "The initial results are promising," he reported. "The oxygen levels in our atmosphere have begun to rise again, thanks to the prototype. Our people are showing signs of recovery." A wave of relief swept through the lab. The prototype seemed to be working, but there was no room for complacency. The Vorath had been through so much, and the team had to ensure that the improvements would last. Dr. Marcus responded, "That's excellent news. Please continue monitoring the situation closely and report any changes. We're still here to support you in any way we can." The Vorath leader nodded. "We appreciate your help. The prototype is making a difference." With the message ended, the team's focus shifted to analyzing the long-term effects of the prototype. They needed to be sure that the Vorath could maintain their new way of breathing and that their adaptation would continue to work as planned. Emily and her team conducted simulations and tests to predict how the Vorath would fare over time. They used data from their previous studies and compared it to the real-time feedback from the Vorath. "We need to ensure that this adaptation doesn't cause any unforeseen side effects," Emily said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "If there's anything we missed, it could have serious consequences." Dr. Marcus nodded. "We've made progress, but our work isn't finished. We need to be thorough and address any potential issues before they become problems." Meanwhile, the Vorath began to show signs of recovery. The once depleted oxygen levels in their atmosphere were gradually returning to normal. The Vorath were no longer gasping for breath, and their health was improving. They were starting to regain their strength and vitality. As the days passed, the Vorath leader sent more positive updates. "The adaptation is working better than we hoped," he said. "Our people are recovering and our environment is stabilizing. The prototype has given us a new lease on life." Dr. Marcus and his team could hardly believe the turnaround. They had feared the worst, but their efforts had made a significant difference. The Vorath were not only surviving but beginning to thrive again. In the lab, celebrations were subdued but heartfelt. The team had accomplished something extraordinary. They had saved an entire species from the brink of extinction. The sense of accomplishment was profound, but so was the awareness that the situation had been incredibly close. Dr. Marcus took a moment to reflect on the journey. "We've come a long way," he said, addressing his team. "From the initial crisis to now, we've faced countless challenges. But thanks to everyone's hard work and dedication, we've turned the situation around." Emily smiled, though her eyes were still tired. "It's been a tough ride, but seeing the Vorath recover makes it all worth it." The lab team continued their work, making final adjustments to the prototype and ensuring that the Vorath would continue to benefit from their adaptation. They remained vigilant, knowing that there was still more to do. The Vorath leader reached out one final time, his expression one of deep gratitude. "We cannot thank you enough for what you have done for us. Your help has been invaluable. We owe our survival to your ingenuity and determination." Dr. Marcus replied, "It was a team effort. We're just glad we could help. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask." As the communication ended, the team began to wind down their operations. The immediate crisis had been averted, but the experience had left its mark. They had seen firsthand the power of human ingenuity and cooperation in the face of a seemingly insurmountable challenge. Dr. Marcus looked out of the lab's window at the stars. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but they had proven that even in the darkest moments, there was hope. The Vorath had been saved, and humanity had taken a giant leap forward in understanding and collaboration. The team knew that new challenges would come, but for now, they could take pride in their success. They had not only restored oxygen to the Vorath, but had also forged a bond of cooperation between two very different species. It was a testament to what could be achieved when people worked together toward a common goal. With the oxygen levels restored and the Vorath recovering, the team prepared for the next phase of their work, ready to face whatever the future might hold. The journey was far from over, but they had proven that even in the vast expanse of space, hope and determination could light the way. A new friendship, the crisis had passed, and the atmosphere in the Vorath ship was much more hopeful. The oxygen levels were stable, and the Vorath were slowly returning to their former strength. The once tense interactions between humans and Vorath had begun to shift towards something new, an opportunity for genuine friendship and cooperation. Dr. Marcus and his team were invited to the Vorath ship for a celebration. It was a rare gesture, a sign that the Vorath were ready to acknowledge the help they had received and to look forward to a future of collaboration. As Dr. Marcus and his team entered the Vorath ship, they were greeted with a scene of vibrant activity. The Vorath, who had once been pale and weakened, were now moving with renewed energy. Their ship, which had been a somber place of survival, was now alive with color and activity. Decorations hung from the walls, and there was a sense of festivity in the air. The Vorath leader, looking more vibrant than ever, approached Dr. Marcus with a smile. "Welcome to our celebration," he said warmly. "We owe this moment to your hard work and dedication." "Thank you." Dr. Marcus smiled back, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. "We're glad to be here. It's been a challenging journey, but seeing you all recover and thrive is the greatest reward." The Vorath leader gestured to a large table filled with various alien foods and drinks. "Please join us. We wish to celebrate not just the restoration of our oxygen, but the beginning of a new era of friendship between our peoples." As Dr. Marcus and his team mingled with the Vorath, they were introduced to various aspects of Vorath culture. The food was unlike anything they had ever tasted, exotic and intriguing, with flavors that danced on their tongues. The Vorath explained the significance of each dish, sharing stories and traditions from their world. Emily, who had been particularly involved in the research and development of the prototype, found herself engrossed in a conversation with a Vorath scientist. They discussed their respective fields of study, exchanging ideas and insights. Despite the language barrier, there was a clear mutual respect and fascination. "This is incredible," Emily said, her eyes wide with wonder. "I never imagined we'd be sharing knowledge like this." The Vorath scientist nodded. "Our cultures may be different, but our quest for knowledge is the same. We have learned much from your technology, and we hope to share our own discoveries with you." Dr. Marcus wandered over to where the Vorath leader was speaking with a group of his officers. The leader's demeanor was much lighter than before, and he seemed genuinely pleased. "Tell me, what's next for you and your people?" Dr. Marcus asked. The Vorath leader considered the question for a moment before responding. "We are planning to re-establish our old trade routes and strengthen our alliances. We have seen the benefits of working together, and we want to build on that." Dr. Marcus nodded. "That sounds like a great plan. We'd be happy to continue our collaboration and share any knowledge that might benefit your people." The Vorath leader's eyes sparkled with gratitude. "We look forward to a future where our species work side by side. The challenges we faced have shown us that cooperation can lead to remarkable results." As the evening progressed, the atmosphere grew more relaxed and informal. The Vorath and humans laughed and danced together, enjoying the shared sense of achievement and the promise of a new beginning. It was clear that the bonds formed during the crisis had evolved into a genuine friendship. Dr. Marcus and his team were given small tokens of appreciation, beautifully crafted items from Vorath artisans. Each gift was a symbol of the respect and gratitude that the Vorath felt towards their human allies. As the celebration drew to a close, Dr. Marcus gathered his team for a brief moment of reflection. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice filled with pride. "What started as a desperate situation has turned into a new era of understanding and cooperation. We've made friends, not just allies." Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's amazing to think about how far we've come. The Vorath have become more than just a species in need. They're now part of a larger community that spans across the stars." The team exchanged smiles, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. They had faced incredible challenges and had emerged victorious, not just in solving the immediate crisis, but in forging a lasting connection with an alien species. As they prepared to leave the Vorath ship, Dr. Marcus looked out at the stars, feeling a renewed sense of hope. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but the friendship between humans and Vorath was a beacon of what could be achieved when different species worked together. The Vorath leader stood at the entrance of the ship, bidding them farewell. "We will remember this night as the beginning of a new chapter in our history," he said. "Thank you for everything." Dr. Marcus shook the leader's hand, feeling a deep connection. "It's been an honor. We look forward to many more years of friendship and collaboration." With that, the team boarded their spacecraft and set course for Earth. The journey back was filled with a sense of accomplishment and optimism. They had not only saved a species, but had also opened the door to a future where different worlds could come together in peace and understanding. As they approached Earth, Dr. Marcus reflected on the journey. The crisis had been a test of human ingenuity and compassion, and they had succeeded. The bonds of friendship forged with the Vorath were a testament to the power of cooperation and hope. The stars twinkled in the vast expanse of space, and Dr. Marcus felt a sense of awe at the possibilities that lay ahead. The universe was full of challenges and opportunities, and the friendship between humans and Vorath was just the beginning of a new era of exploration and collaboration. The future is bright. The return to Earth was a triumphant one. Dr. Marcus and his team were greeted as heroes, their success with the Vorath celebrated across the globe. The mission had not only saved an alien species, but it also opened new avenues for interstellar cooperation. As the spacecraft landed, Dr. Marcus looked out at the familiar sight of Earth, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. The team had faced numerous challenges and had emerged victorious, their efforts leading to a bright new future for both humans and the Vorath. The day after their return, a press conference was held to discuss the successful mission. Dr. Marcus and his team took their places at the podium, surrounded by eager reporters and cameras. The room buzzed with excitement as people awaited the details of their incredible journey. Dr. Marcus began with a warm smile. "Thank you all for joining us today. We are excited to share the success of our mission with you. What started as a critical situation has turned into a remarkable story of collaboration and friendship." He continued, "The Vorath, once struggling to survive, are now thriving thanks to the efforts of our team. We developed a prototype that helped them adapt to breathing water, and their oxygen levels have been restored. This success marks the beginning of a new era of cooperation between our species." The reporters eagerly fired questions about the technology used and the future of human-Vorath relations. Dr. Marcus answered each question with clarity and pride, highlighting the potential for future collaboration and shared advancements. The public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. People were fascinated by the story of how humanity had worked together with an alien species to overcome a major crisis. The success of the mission inspired many and sparked interest in further space exploration and interstellar diplomacy. Meanwhile, the Vorath continued to make progress. They were now working on integrating the technology provided by humans into their own systems, ensuring long-term stability and improvement. The Vorath leader sent regular updates, sharing news of their growing prosperity and expressing gratitude for the partnership. In one of his messages, the Vorath leader said, "We are seeing remarkable improvements in our environment and health. The technology you provided has not only saved our people, but has also strengthened our resolve to continue working together." We look forward to a future filled with possibilities. Dr. Marcus and his team were thrilled to hear these updates. They knew their work had made a significant impact and were excited about the potential for future collaboration. The success of the mission had opened doors to new opportunities and relationships in space. With the mission complete, the team began to focus on their next steps. They were planning future projects and exploring ways to expand their knowledge and cooperation with other alien species. The experience with the Vorath had shown them the incredible possibilities of working together across species boundaries. Dr. Marcus often reflected on the journey. The crisis had been intense, but the outcome had been overwhelmingly positive. The friendship formed with the Vorath was a testament to what could be achieved when different beings came together with a common goal. In the following months, Dr. Marcus and his team continued their research and development, eager to apply what they had learned from the Vorath mission to other areas of space exploration. They were also involved in establishing new protocols for interstellar diplomacy, aiming to make future interactions as successful as their work with the Vorath. The success of the mission had also led to new international collaborations on Earth. Governments and private organizations were eager to explore further partnerships with alien species and invest in space technology. The Vorath had become a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it reached out beyond its own world. As the years passed, the friendship between humans and the Vorath continued to flourish. The two species worked together on various projects, from scientific research to cultural exchanges. They shared knowledge and resources, building a stronger bond with each passing year. Dr. Marcus watched with pride as the partnership grew. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities. The mission with the Vorath had not only solved an immediate crisis, but had also set the stage for a new era of exploration and collaboration. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, reflecting the optimism and hope that now characterized humanity's approach to space. The universe was a vast and wondrous place, and the bonds formed with the Vorath were just the beginning of a larger journey. Dr. Marcus and his team knew that challenges and adventures awaited them in the vast expanse of space. But they were ready to face them, armed with the knowledge that cooperation and friendship could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. As he looked out at the night sky, Dr. Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The future was not only bright, but filled with opportunities for growth, discovery, and unity.